Salutations, respected viewers. I'm about to do a debate on the death penalty. The motion before the House will be, this House believes that the death penalty should be restored. So I shall open for the proposition. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, this House will support the motion. We know that the death penalty must be restored for several reasons. First of all, it's mere justice that this should be done. Second of all, it will deter further murders. Fourth of all, it will prevent recidivism, that's reoffending, and that was third of all. And fourth of all, we are going to do this in a way which will avoid wrongful executions. So I'll go through those again one by one, but I'll come to our model towards the end. The lex talionis is there. That is the law whereby if somebody commits an offence this grave, it must be punished with death. We only want the death penalty for premeditated murder. I'll spell out that in greater depth later on. Because life is uniquely sacred, and therefore the only apposite punishment is that the murderer loses his or her life. Some people on the other side will no doubt say, oh, this shows disrespect for life. If you restore the death penalty, nothing could be further from the truth. It's precisely because taking someone's life is the ultimate crime that it must receive the ultimate punishment, not life imprisonment, which is also awarded for lesser offences. It's complete nonsense to say that bringing back capital punishment shows disrespect for human life. It's like saying that imprisoning people for theft shows disrespect for property. The very opposite is the case. As Gilbert and Sullivan would say, the punishment should fit the crime. On our side of the House, we want to save the innocent. They want to save the guilty. And it will do so by deterring murders, because those who are considering committing the ultimate crime will think that they better not, because they will pay with their lives for this most heinous offence. You see, since the death penalty was abolished in various countries, such as South Africa, the United Kingdom, Australia, Colombia, Republic of Ireland, you name it, the death penalty shot up. And so, therefore, hundreds of thousands of innocent people have been murdered precisely because capital punishment has been done away with. You could look at the United States, the way the death penalty, so the way murder rate went up when the death penalty was abolished, and it went down when it was brought back. You can compare state to state and see the higher murder rate in states, especially in relation to their general crime rate, if they don't have the supreme sanction. So it simply stands to reason that murder should be punished with having your life taken. Moreover, we also got to think of what happens if we send people to prison for life. They could then murder prison officers or other prisoners. We have to think about the human rights and the safety of those people imprisoned for other crimes. They have human rights too. They should be imprisoned, but they should not be murdered, and they're always in danger. If someone's serving a life sentence for murder, why shouldn't they do it again? It can't get any worse. Therefore, the only way to prevent this happening is by putting people to death if they have committed murder. It's not a left or right issue. You can be a liberal or a socialist and be in favour of this. Many liberals, Churchill was a liberal for a long time. He was in favour of the death penalty. Clement Attlee was a socialist, and many Labour MPs were in favour of the death penalty in the old days, of communists, or even now some are in favour of the death penalty. So John Stuart Mill, the outstanding liberal philosopher, he published an essay why the death penalty must be kept there, because nothing else would discourage people from committing this most detestable crime of murder. Only the death penalty would reduce the incidence of murder. They will argue that sometimes we'll put an innocent person to death, but the state must never ever kill an innocent person. They don't really believe that. They are not pacifists. We fight a war. Inevitably, civilians are killed in collateral damage. Of course, we should try to avoid innocent deaths, but it's not completely avoidable. If you really want to keep murderers alive, I want to hear you argue that we'd never ever use force under any circumstances. We go to war sometimes. Soldiers can be conscripted. Men on both sides, they're not particularly bad people. The enemy are not wicked people. They just happen to be born in a different country, conscripted into that army. Soldiers who never wanted to be soldiers can be slaughtered in their millions. Yet a sadistic murderer must be kept safe and sound, must never have a hair on his head harmed. This is obscene. So for the foregoing reasons, I submit it's imperative that the death penalty be restored now, and thereby countless lives be saved. Our model is that it would be only for premeditated murder committed over the age of 18, only if the jury convicts unanimously. The death penalty will be a sentencing option, it won't be automatic. There'll be an automatic right of appeal, both of the verdict and then of the sentence. The condemned must have a psychiatric evaluation, the mentally ill will not be put to death, and the means of the death penalty will be execution by firing squad to ensure an instantaneous death. 10 bullets in the head would do the trick, and only the death penalty if it was backed up by DNA evidence. There's only a 1 in 10 million chance that we get it wrong, and people are more likely, the murderer is more likely to die of a lightning strike whilst on death row than to be wrongfully convicted. 1 in 10 million, it may not be good enough for some casuists, from some smart Alex over there, but is good enough for any rational person. So this does not apply to crime passionnel. Supposing a wife finds a husband in bed with another woman, she loses her temper and shoots him dead. No, it won't apply to murders in the heat of the moment. Only if somebody planned it, thought about it. Only then, because these are the sort of murders which can be discouraged by scaring people off with the death penalty. So, what have I told you? We must bring this back because it's simply just to kill murderers. Second of all, it will protect the innocent by discouraging the greater incidence of murder. Third of all, it will prevent this crime ever being committed again by the malfeasant. And fourth of all, because we have got a system with reservations to ensure that only premeditated murders committed by adults of sound mind, when the guilt is absolutely certain, only those murders will lead to the death penalty. I have done. So now I've got to be the other side. Right. Mr. President, we utterly oppose this monstrous notion that the death penalty be restored for a number of reasons. It would inevitably lead to 2 miscarriages of justice. It would not deter murder at the least, and there will be a slippery slope to using the death penalty for more and more crimes. And overall, it is barbaric. So let me go through those one by one. There is no appeal from beyond the grave. In this country, we had a number of high-profile cases where totally innocent people were convicted of crimes that they did not commit. And had we had capital punishment, these people would long since have been sent to meet their maker. So we must not be sending people to doom on the basis of a flawed jury decision. Any judicial system is made up of people. Human beings are flawed. To err is human. Therefore, we cannot have our necessarily imperfect system sending people to an early grave. That would be utterly unjust, and it would undermine faith in the justice system. It would leave egg on the face of the state. We can't do that. And you say we could have appeals. Appeals can take 20 years. It's cruel and unusual to keep someone on the death row for 20 years, such as often occurs in various states of the USA. And it is no deterrent, actually. And it doesn't reduce the cost, keeping people, sending people to the death penalty, because these appeals are very expensive. It costs more due to court cases to execute people than it does to simply keep them alive for the rest of their time. It also would scare innocent people into guilty pleas, such as occurs in the United States. Innocent people are petrified of the notion of being put to death. Therefore, they plead guilty to crimes that they did not commit, simply to escape the gas chamber of the electric chair. Other reasons, there is no evidence that it does discourage the death penalty. There was statistical sleight of hand from the other side of the House, and indeed there's plenty of evidence that actually abolishing the death penalty reduces the incidence of murder, such as occurred in Canada. Another point is somebody thinks, well, I've got to, not only if I've committed this murder lots of other witnesses, just so I stay safe. It's the only way that I'm going to not be caught. So it actually increases the incidence of homicide and does not reduce it in the least. This terrible notion wouldn't save a single life if it were implemented. And are we happy that the state deliberately kill innocent people? Not in wartime, not when it's exigent to use force, but calmly, dispassionately, in peacetime, deliberately ending a human life. The very notion is repulsive. It would be a slippery slope. They say they don't use it for premeditated murders, only for adults. Pretty soon they'd use it for minors, they'd use it for people who were mentally ill, they'd broaden the definition of what's premeditated murder, and hundreds of people would be sent to their graves every year by the state, and it's beneath the dignity of the state to do something so foul. We owe it to even the worst amongst us to keep them alive, because we respect human life and we are not cruel and barbaric. It is sick that anyone should have this morbid fascination with killing other humans, not killing in self-defense, not killing armed soldiers in battle, but deliberately killing defenseless people. And some of them are repulsive, but because we are civilized, we don't put people to death. We're better than that. Anyway, capital punishment for attempted murder, you'd bring in that as well. So what's the moral difference between the state, which deliberately kills people, and a murderer which does so when it's completely avoidable? We could keep these people in supermax. We could keep them in solitary confinement. There was no risk to the guards or other prisoners. It would be altogether unjust and a breach of their human rights to do this. Everyone has human rights, even wicked people. So we do not want to go back into the Middle Ages. Albert Pierpoint, who was the United Kingdom's official executioner for decades, he saw so many people on the gallows, and he said that he hadn't saved a single life. It had simply satisfied this repulsive thirst for revenge. And he was a death penalty opponent in the end. He would know more about it than anybody else. So for those reasons, I urge the House to reject this ghastly motion, because it would undoubtedly bring about wrongful executions, because it would not save a single innocent life, because we would be opening the floodgates to more and more people being executed for lesser offences, and lastly, and perhaps most importantly, because it is simply barbaric, and this motion must be firmly rejected. The death penalty is something with which there can be no compromise. We oppose it in every single case. I urge the House to vote no.